We try to do chats like this in the Smart Soil members community once a month or so, whenever we can rustle everyone together. So if you enjoyed this, and make sure you check out what we do. But I'm going to facilitate. I'll try not to talk too much because no one came here to listen to me. We came here to listen to Di. Matthew's here today. Ian has had to duck out and actually do some farming. Funny that, hey? So Matty's stepped in, fresh back on the shores from Sweden. So welcome back, Matthew. Lovely to have you here, mate. Thanks for joining us. And yeah, everyone, thanks so much for taking your time out and joining us today. Really looking forward to the session. So I'll stop blabbing on. I'm going to pass the mic over to Matthew and Di, and we're just going to start with a little bit of a broad picture for those that don't know where you guys are out in Mollarin there and where Mollarin is. If you could just paint a little picture of your context, sort of landscape, soil-wise, and then a bit about natural intelligence farming.
Well, I might start with the location and stuff, and Matthew can talk a bit about the natural intelligence farming. I guess, yeah, we're out at Mollarin, which is in the northern part of the central wheat belt of Western Australia, right on the edge of the pastoral country, so a semi-arid rainfall zone. Was typically about 300 mil per annum probably 20 years ago, but the last 20 she would have dropped down to being an average of about 200 now. Yeah, it's a pretty spectacular part of the world from our perspective. There's some granite outcrops and some nice high points, but compared to Canadian high points, probably valley floor. But yeah, no, for us it's home, and there's some parts of native bushland that have been retained, thankfully, because this is one of the later cleared areas of the wheat belt. There's probably a bit larger areas of bushland being retained, but still a lot of over clearing throughout the whole area. Yeah, variety of soil types from very deep, poor sands. They call them a wodgel sand, which is acid subsoil and highly aluminium toxic type soil, through to some red clays and clay loams. And then there's a lot of salinity through the wheat belt as well, which is an issue through this area too. But yeah, no, a great place to be other than that.
Yeah. And so the natural intelligence side of things is a kind of like a methodology of farming in a sense that Mum, Dad and Jane have developed over the past about 23 years, I think it is, since 2001. And yeah, I mean, you could go on a tangent for ages trying to explain it in depth, but in short, it's a way of using nature's intuitive wisdom basically to restore our soils and our ecosystems back to how they used to be before we came through and with industrial systems, ripped them up and things like that. And yeah, basically trying to work alongside nature instead of against it, and kind of take a step back from thinking that typically humans know best, and yeah, really having a look at our land from a point of humility and seeing what the land's really asking for and how we can do what we can do to support it on its journey and returning it back to a really thriving and diverse ecosystem. And for me, I find natural intelligence farming is more than just a set list of practices that you need to do to input it. It's also really comes from the caretakers who are looking after their land. And sometimes I like to say it's natural intelligence living, because it's how you live your entire life, and it's a very what's the word, like a very inclusive thing.
Yeah, I guess it started originally was as we started to back off all the human induced input type approach, whether it be with the livestock or the land, we just saw how that natural system functioned so beautifully of its own accord. Just the interactions, the complexities, the things, we were sort of told in the traditional learning that if you didn't do this and didn't do that, everything would get sick and diseased. And then we found out that, if you stop doing this and you stop doing that, well, actually they don't get diseased and they actually get healthier. And you thought, wow, that's a bit of a learning curve. So that's where it became natural intelligence farming, because the natural intelligence of all this stuff could do it all way better than our little mindsets could make it at the time. And it was also a bit of a tongue-in-cheek poke at the artificial intelligence world, which has been ramping up significantly. And we thought, well, you know, I'll still hold by the natural intelligence way as being a better form of things happening, because we certainly don't even know 1% of what's going out there in the natural world. So who are we to say that we can actually create something better?
I love that. And I love that you didn't try and put it in too much of a box. Like you said, Matthew, it's not a set. I see similarities in that and the definition, you know, of regenerative agriculture, you know, where if we start to put boxes around things, and it limits the ability for it to grow and to flourish into what it can be. Really beautiful. Thanks for setting that up. Kevin, I'm just interested to get your take on where you are, mate, because you are in a very different part of the world, but there's also some similarities. So I don't know if you wanted to speak to whereabouts you are, what you do, and you know, what do you see as the similarities and challenges that you face over there?
Yeah, that's a good thing about me is where am I? I don't know. I'm here, I'm there. I'm so you know, the great thing about me, you know, I moved back to the farm in 1999 and realized that I bought dirt instead of soil. So I thought, okay, we have to start farming it a little differently than what our family farm had. So we got into short-term forage rotation. We got into winter cereals. We got into livestock grazing. We reduced the amount of tillage we're doing and looking at ways of reducing the synthetics. And hey, that kind of sounds like soil health principles, doesn't it? So that was well before we even, you know, that was coined out there. So it was a real good learning research farm in eastern part of Saskatchewan. So it's about in the middle of Canada. In 2021, my dad said, okay, he wanted to retire. And so we have two girls that were in university and asked what they wanted to do, and they didn't want to come back to the farm. So we put the farm up for sale, and now I'm coaching, started coaching full time regenerative farmers, and going out and, you know, educating people on how that we don't have to continue doing what we used to. Kind of exactly the same story as what the Haggertys had, and you know, it was when you know, as I was going through in about 2008, we started a company called Cover Crops Canada. So then we started going around and to small towns, town halls with some of the research groups, and getting small groups talking about regenerative agriculture, and, you know, how do we transition from conventional to, you know, once again, natural intelligent type of systems. And it was great because, you know, we started out with, you know, 4 to 6 people in a hall. And, you know, when things started getting some traction, all of a sudden there's 40, 50 people at these halls. Then, you know, the whole traction started. And that's when, you know, I was fortunate as we're driving around the countryside talking to people. I met people like Shorty that, you know, when I guess take another step back, I didn't meet or didn't hear about Gabe Brown until about 6 years into my program. And when I heard what Gabe was doing about a time that I was doing it, and we were seeing the same results or similar results. So I thought, you know, when it comes to science, when we can get replication, that shows that there is some science behind it. What is the science? We don't know. There's, you know, it took a few years before Dr. Christine Jones came to Canada, and I cornered her and had a really good yarn with her. And yeah, she kicked me in the butt and got things rolling. And yeah, it just kept growing. And so this past year, when I was given the opportunity to go to and spend some time in Australia, once again, meeting great people like Amanda, like Rochelle, you just go through the whole list of people out there, and, you know, spending 3 days out with the Haggertys, the brain hurt. And so it's this learning. And the really neat thing is, and, you know, I was really nervous about going out there, and, you know, I spent a fair amount of time on different farms and operations. And I was nervous about, you know, I wanted to learn, I wanted to absorb, but people were asking me questions. And they're asking the same questions that are asked in Canada. It's the same questions, same problems. And I said in Canada, I always had that preface. In Canada, this is what I would do. And, talking to, the Haggertys, listening to, all these people that I had a lot of respect for, it was the same process. It was maybe instead of us talking about smooth brome, it was Aussies talking about Kokoya grass. Same type of plant. We're going to have to manage it the same way. It's just finding that system to make it work. And the really big eye opener is before it came back in July, so about a year ago, I grabbed soil samples and sent it to a lab in Alberta. It's the Chinook Applied Research Association Soil Health Lab. How's that for a handle? And so they did analysis on it, and not only the chemistry side, but they did the biological testing. And she said same genuses of the bacteria, the nematodes, the protozoa, all the same genuses, different species doing the same function. The big difference is Haggertys are dealing with 97% sand, which is really tough to find that sandy of soil here. But the biology, the chemistry, and once again, how old are your soils? 80 million years old, where they haven't been glaciated. Our soils are, Shorty, you're going to have to help me. When's the last glacier that came across the prairies? It wasn't 80 million years ago. So, okay, here's number.
It was about 10,000. It was about 10,000 years ago.
So, really young soils, but your nutrient availability under a well-managed, well-biological, solid system was just driving. Like when I looked at the chemical analysis, their soils and my soils on the farm look very similar. Our pH was a little higher. Our calcium was quite a bit higher. Our magnesium was about the same. Iron was way higher in Australia. The aluminum was quite a bit higher. See, I got that. I got it right. I didn't say aluminum. So quite a bit higher in Australia. But once again, it was kind of stuff that I had in my head that those should be the same. But your NPKs, your micronutrients, they're fine. Mm-hmm. And it was a testament to show that when we have the biology right, and once again, Rochelle, you've seen a lot of soil samples and you've lived this. It works. When you get the biology working, we create these systems that are functional. Mm-hmm. And that's the biggest thing that I see is the function. So we've been farming a lot of the land in Western Canada for 100 years, maybe some areas 120 years, and we've really messed them up. We're really efficient at breaking them down. And this is where, when we start dealing with getting life back into the soils, it's incredible how farming becomes so simple when we have these systems going. And we were fortunate enough, Shorty was really fortunate because he spent 5 days with Dr. David Johnson the last couple of weeks. And so he was out in Western Canada educating us on the use of Johnson's tube bioreactors and how we can get it going. And it's just been going to be a perfect segue in a couple of weeks when we have people that have been using it on large scale coming to Western Canada to educate us about their process and how, here's the theory about making the compost. How do we take it to large scale? So we'll have 2 living, breathing experts in Western Canada the end of July, and going out and kick us in the butt and tell us how to make some changes.
That's so cool. And I think it might be worthwhile bringing up there, Di and Matthew, that you guys are actually doing quite a lot of the Johnson Sioux compost out there with on-farm input. So I don't know if it's worth just instead of brushing over that, because I think that will be of interest to those here today. Is it worthwhile? Do you want to just touch on a little bit about how you're using the Johnson Sioux and then getting that biology to get that function happening out on those new bits of country?
Yeah, no, it's been like saying, using the on-farm inputs has been a fantastic thing. So we've used a base of our multi-species hay that we grow, And then we get the sheep manure from under the shearing shed. So we're very fortunate having wool growing sheep, because when you contain them in the shearing shed overnight, you get a beautiful supply underneath that we can just bucket out. And yes, that gives us a huge diversity, I guess, of organisms in that manure, given the landscape that the animals have access to and the diversity in their diet. So then you go and mix that all together in the Johnson-Su method. It has created a wonderful fungal diversity. And it's really interesting. We use the Johnson-Su primarily as a seed dressing, but we do produce enough each year to put a bit down the tube at seeding time and foliar, but it doesn't get across the whole program other than the seed dressing, but mainly because we still haven't got the capacity to make enough. We put in about 10,000 hectares of cover crop, not cover crops, cash crop this year, and another couple of thousand hectares of cover crops. So all that seed gets coated. Yeah, so where I was going from that was just what we've seen as a result from the fungal diversity now occurring within the landscape. The year before, the last 18 months, I guess, was the driest on record. We had 84 millimetres for the growing season and only about 120 or so for the 12-month period. And it was about 180 for the 18-month period. Anyway, everything, of course, was fairly quiet during that time frame, but we've had a couple of inches or more since June started this year. And the place, as far as fungal diversity and fruiting bodies around the place, has been phenomenal. We're all taking photographs of these fungal bodies that we've never seen before. Even up to yesterday, we found a little bird's nest fern, which was absolutely tiny, with little fruiting bodies about the size of your little fingernail. And just thinking, wow, this is just magic. And there's just been different occasions of that throughout the whole landscape now. So basically putting their hands up and saying, hey, we're here. Might not have seen you for a little while, but we're here.
Even the huge diversity of different mushrooms just popping up all over the farm. The folks have been loving it. They've been able to have mushrooms for breakfast most mornings.
Breakfast, lunch, and dinner. That's, and for those that haven't been out to the Western Australian wheat belt, you do not expect mushrooms, and I expect that there probably aren't mushrooms growing in many places out in that managed country. So to see them popping up on Prospect is just remarkable. And the other week when we were out there is just mind-blowing to see the recovery, not only in the cropping areas or places that you've been working, but those native areas are starting to infill as well with more diversity. And that's so the line between where the cropping begins sort of thing and the native regeneration is sort of hard to define. And I think that's, correct me if I'm wrong, but part of the whole natural intelligence picture and what you're mentioning about getting the diversity into the rumen of the animals and then into the crops. So that might just be worth mentioning about how you're using the livestock as well to spread that microbiome and encourage that diversity.
Yeah, that's exactly right. What you just mentioned there, Dave, was the fact that the animals are our mobile bioinoculators, I guess, because they do have access to those bushlands and then out to the cropping country. So they are able to transfer microbiomes as well as nutrients. So yeah, it's just been wonderful. And that's where we do start to get the cropping land starting to look more and more like the native land, but also, like you're saying, stimulating that native land too to recover and restore too, because there is the greater landscape issues with salinity and stuff all around the place. And just once we can get the water cycle functioning best on this property, and then we can start alleviating the salinity on site here. But then, as you know, our big plan is to affect large water cycles as well. Yes. Over time, just chipping away at that one.
And even the sheep become a massive tool. And when we're taking on new country like this year, we've just taken on an extra 5,000 acres, about that. And yeah, they've obviously been in the industrial system for many, many years, and their organic matter is extremely low, just very degraded soils. But by putting the first thing we do is always put the sheep on, because the sheep like transport our microbial diversity and that microbiome from our property that we've been building over 23 years, and able to put that onto that new property and really start getting that diversity through that landscape. And then when we come in with the seeding, whether that be a cash crop or a cover crop, the seed's still got those seed dressings on it with the Johnson Sues, which have, because the Johnson Sues are made from everything off our own property, they've also got that microbial diversity to get in there. And then same with the down the tube, and then the foliar sprayers come on. So even in that first 12 months on a property, we've noticed can really kickstart things and get things going. And we've seen a lot of big results after 12 months.
And I think that's exactly what Matthew's just described then is exactly why we can get away with on that first year going cold turkey in dropping off synthetic fertilisers. So from a property that had a history of that, having the sheep go on there first, cranking up that microbiome across that whole landscape is just, yeah, how we can get away with that, because people have asked that question a bit of, you know, how can you go cold turkey? You know, you wouldn't necessarily recommend it, but I think that's what helps us get away with it.
That's amazing. And you mentioned something quite profound a few times, Di, that the sheep actually know where the most degraded parts of that land are, and they actually camp there and deposit their manure and urine there in those areas. That's just, it's just amazing. I guess that is the natural intelligence embodied, isn't it? Is right there. Is take all the interventions out and let nature do its thing. But not going to work with sheep that have been in that industrial system either. So these
Yes.
animals have developed that wisdom as well, haven't they?
That's right. They're multi-generational animals, and yeah, we've taken that human intervention side, I guess, off them, you know, 23 or so years ago, and it really has enabled them to fully develop their gut microbiome, and that has affected their behaviours. They're a very different animal at the beginning. They're a very calm animal. They act very well as a mob. Like say, seeking out the weaker parts of the paddock to do the toileting part, and then moving on, spending a lot of time just sleeping. And I guess that's to do with the micronutrients available in their food. They're not having to run around chasing lots of tucker to meet their daily requirements. They can, yeah, just have a few mouthfuls and then sleep for the rest of the day. So, yeah, no, it's been a big learning curve for us to see that, and how clever. I call them landscape maestros or maestros or whatever the word might be, but it's what they do. They weave in their wisdom and have, you know, towards a better outcome.
It's quite remarkable when you look, we've just finished seeding a month or so ago, and when you go on through seeding a lot of the paddocks, like, because you're up high in the tractor, you can actually see, like, you know, get a bird's eye view of the sheep's activity across the paddock. You will see an area that's got plenty of ground cover, and the sheep haven't, like, they've grazed it, but there's no manure or anything across it. But then there'll be a bit of a circle over here that's a bit of a weaker country, and yeah, they've, it's like the little toilet spot they've all gone back to. It's quite impressive to see.
Yeah.
That's so cool. So weaving back in the cover crop tool, I guess. So when you're taking on that new country, could you just run us through, I guess, the process of your steps in how you're getting this back to health? So we've got the animals going on there first, and then you're coming in behind with a cover crop of something in there. What are the steps
varies
from
a
there?
bit, Dave, depending on the soil. There'll be some paddocks that are so either wind eroded or whatever, that we may go in with a multi-species cover straight up, and it depends on the term of the lease or whatever prospect we've got on it. If it's a long term, we might do more covers on it to start with, but sometimes it might be a straight up 1 year lease, and we've got to make a return off that first year, so we can go straight in with a cash crop. And because there's so much of that biological input on that cash crop, it serves, you know, whether it's a monoculture or a multi-species, it's still doing a huge amount for restoring biodiversity under the soil. And I've spoken to Christine Jones about this at length a bit, you know, with the seed dressing, the compost extract and worm liquids going down the tube at seeding time, and then having a foliar application. There's a lot of opportunity for diversity of organisms to be put back in, or different metabolites being put into that environment to stimulate what might be naturally within the soil anyway. So yeah, whichever way it goes, we do a bit of both across all areas, and just sort of target the areas that need the most help, I guess, with the multi-species cover crops.
So they're sort of like your bigger tool to approach if something's really degraded, sort of like a first step in in
Yeah,
that sense.
things that are badly compacted or wind eroded or whatever else would target them with the cover
Yes.
crops for sure to really ramp it up.
I will come back to this as well, Di, but I think it's important to mention as well that, I mean, we talk a lot about cover crops and seeding things, right? But what I really love about what you guys are doing out there is you're not just relying on, again, human input of seed. It's actually recruiting all of that, the natural stuff that's there, and those perennials and things that you didn't even know were there. Can we talk a little bit about that, and then we may come back to it?
Yeah, I guess that's where we've been a bit comfortable with that too, Dave, because that's what we have seen, particularly up on this northern country that's probably only been farmed, I don't know, maybe 80 years or so, and parts of it's probably only been farmed 50 years. Yeah, what we noticed was that even within 12 months, when we put in even a monoculture crop, with all the stuff going down on the seed into the ground with the, the liquid injection, within 12 months, if we had the right rainfall, we'd have the native grasses coming back straight away. So we knew instantly that soil ecology was having a dramatic change where that air seeder had gone, to have these plants come back so quickly. So yeah, that's gave us a lot of confidence and, a lot of joy too to see that, because one, they're really, a lot higher successional plants for the area, and the animals love them, and they gave us, a summer grazing opportunity, which wouldn't have normally existed, let alone that whole nutrient cycling and, small water cycle stuff happening over the summer here, which was something that just blew our mind because we'd never had seen that in our whole career. And to see that occurring, we talk to Cole Sice and say, how on earth are we ever going to be able to achieve pasture cropping over here? But as those things have happened, and with more summer rainfall patterns to stimulate the growth of those summer actives, a lot wider opportunity is opened up to us.
So you've actually activated those seeds that were dormant in the soil with the biology and the sugars from the cash crop.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, so we just sort of thought, well, really the cash crop can serve as a really good tool as well in that early stage, and continues to do so.
Really just shows that even in such weaker fertility soil types like ours, the resilience that they still have within them, if you get the right things into them, they lap it up and they really go for it.
Yeah.
And you can even see in that first year, we noticed, like, you will see the native grasses come within the furrow that we've actually put the microbial diversity with the extracts and things like that down. That first year, we noticed they come up in the furrows, and then as over the next couple of years, it then diversifies and spreads across the inter rows as well, which is really impressive.
That's just amazing. Oh, sorry, I've just muted you, Matthew. Didn't mean to do that. But Kevin, could you just run us through in the science of that, I guess, of the cover crop and how that's recovering that degraded land? Did you want to just touch a bit about what you think and what you observed out on Prospect?
Well, yeah, that's the great thing. And, the deeper you get into the regenerative, the first thing you find is your sense of observation. It gets sharpened. And, once again, picking on Shorty or Pablo, depending on who's listening right now, he'll reinforce that, as we do these blends and we have the diversity, or even just looking at what plants are growing, and whether it's weeds, whether it's the crop, or what's struggling, what's thriving. I'll give you an example. 2 days ago, I was as I was driving east to the crop tour, I stopped at a Hutterite colony. They asked me to stop in because they're doing some neat things with liquid whey, yucca, some other things, along with their multi-species cover crop that they're going to be silaging for their dairy cattle. And he said 2 years ago the field was full of a nasty weed that's called kochia. It loves saline areas. It loved dry, low calcium, and in North America there's what would be the right word? Well, it doesn't matter, just kochia, but the herbicide tolerance of a lot of these weeds. And kochia, because everybody's hitting with the same chemistry over and over again, once again, with nature's intelligence, guess what we have? Herbicide tolerant kochia. So by going into this multi-species cover crop that we have for this colony, the kochia, they did a pre-seed burn off with some glyphosate along with some yucca and all the other good stuff to minimize the amount of herbicide they were using. But this cover crop is growing, and now the kochia, even though they haven't sprayed it in crop because they killed everything prior to seeding, they seed the cover crop. Slow start this year because it was cold and wet. But the kochia kind of got a foothold. The cover crop started at the same time, but right now the kochia is dying. Even though it hasn't been sprayed, we have changed the soil conditions to take the ecological advantage away from this weed and now transferred it over to our crop. And we've done it through the biology. And, this is what, at this whole idea of power of observation. So, as Di was so graciously driving me around the property for 3 days, we're going through, and she was talking about the mulla on this field and I forget the other grasses but I was taking that in and saying, okay, so what ecological advantage does that have? Why is it there? And when I was down at Brad Jones, he's south of you. I'm blanking the town where he's from, but we were talking and going through and talking about the problems that they have. And he was talking about wild radish on this field was just horrible. And I said, that field is now screaming at you to grow canola. And he said, do you know what? That is where our best canola crops were, is as long as we controlled the wild mustard, we replace it with a like plant because the biology is set up for it. And how do we adjust it is now we throw in a little bit of diversity. So doing monocultures, yeah, it'll get us there. But as soon as we start throwing in, so in Western Canada, lots of canola, but to get around the disease pressure, the bugs, all these other issues with growing canola in tight rotations, there's a lot of Shorty Fensky started up a soil health group on WhatsApp in basically it predominantly Alberta. Would that be fair to say, Shorty? Okay, so a lot of these people are now growing peas and canola together, and the problems of growing monoculture canola disappeared.
Yeah.
Imagine that. So, as we're driving around and Haggertys are telling me about what they're doing and how they're doing it, absolutely. And in the chat, I have a picture of the lupin rhizosheath that they sent me. Unbelievable. And when we get this biology going, we get that resilience. And then when listening to the other during this winter, this past year, I spent 5 days listening to Dr. Christine Jones at different seminars, and she sloughed off. Just show up to one, it's the same presentation. No, the stuff coming out of her head was just blowing me away every time. So once again, for her, it's off the cuff and just, oh yeah, that's old news. No, this is new. Why aren't we talking about this? And so when she was talking about the legacy effect, when we can have these rhizosheaths of these strong microbiome plants, then we seed another strong microbiome plant into it, along with more biology. We just make this system stronger and stronger and more self-reliant. And this is the beautiful thing of it. And, when we get the biology going, now we get the soil aggregation, now we get water infiltration, now we have the nutrient cycling, now the system's working normal. This is the way it should be. And so when, another little story from today. On the way back, I got a text from a person I've been working with for about 7 years now, an organic producer in southern Saskatchewan. And he said, okay, he's growing oats and peas together, and he is getting wild mustard, so a brassica plant, growing where the oats are the thickest. He had a bit of a seeding snafu, so the oats were coming on variable rates. So where that was thin, he didn't have very much of this wild mustard, but in the real thick stuff, he had thicker wild mustard weed. So I was thinking and driving, and we're discussing it, and I said, where the oats were higher in seeding rates, plant density, they were growing with the peas. Being organic producer, you can't be putting fertilizer on. So, okay, so we're working with the natural system. But where he had a higher level of oats, he had more mycorrhizal interaction to get more phosphate from the oats into the peas to then provide more energy for the nodules to fix more nitrogen. So there's more nitrogen being leaked into the system, which is now triggering the wild mustard to grow. As a conventional agronomist, spray it. It's just hit this easy button, nuke it, and we'll start over again because something screwed up and it wasn't my fault. But because we were able to take the step back and think about from the roots moving forward and how these plants are interacting, we were actually able to, I think, to follow the dance steps to see how this intricate dance was happening, and what did that wild mustard tell us? And that's the biggest thing. And the meeting, the crop walk I did yesterday, same sort of thing. This producer, good producer, very forward thinking, great person, but weeds all over the place. And why? Well, he was using red clover as his plow down, and he didn't have a grass with it. He didn't have a forb with it. He didn't have a cover crop after it. So he had bare ground. He had dead soil that he wasn't feeding root exudates. One more story this afternoon. There's a very large farm in eastern Saskatchewan. So about 60,000 acres, so quite large. He is asking lots of questions about this regenerative ag. He took over some organic land where he had some sweet clover. He plowed it down, seeded some yellow mustard for grain, and his yellow mustard ran 30 bushels an acre with no inputs. He said, how do we do this again? And so we spent an hour going through the whole process of these are the steps. This is what we want to do. We want to build that soil. We don't want to build an input account with these companies to keep spending money on land to keep repressing our biology instead of moving it forward.
I think something you touched
I see
on.
I see a lot of heads going.
Yeah, just what you touched on at the start of that too, Kevin, about growing something that wants to grow instead of continually fighting that system and trying to grow something that we want to grow. It's like, well, let's have a look and see what is our land telling us. So I think that's a really, really valid point.
I'd just like to add,
Absolutely.
sorry. Go, Kev.
Absolutely. And this is where, when we see a cover crop like this and we have I talk about 5 functional plant groups. And if we have those 5 functional plant groups and we design it so it's going to be representative of all groups equally, but in this field, the legumes are dominated, what is that telling us? Or if the grasses are dominated, or if the broadleafs are dominated, what is it telling us? And we have to then respect that of, okay, so the legumes are dominating. So that tells us what? We're low in mycorrhizal, we're low in nitrogen. It's trying to catch up. Whereas if it's dominating in the brassicas, that means our nutrient levels are way too high and we need to capture it, store it, and then redistribute it properly in the system. And that is one of the biggest things that I've seen. And as we drive around, you see more and more problems. And the other thing is the science part of it, or I don't know, science. When we get our soil test done, they're testing for nitrates. Nitrates in the system are the most volatile part of the nitrogen. And it's the thing that causes all the problems. It causes lodging, it causes disease, it causes insect outbreaks. We need to be looking for the ammonium. We need to look for amino acid. We need to look for the more complex nitrogen sources, but that's a completely different conversation that we can get into.
Totally. Did you want to add something there, Di?
Yeah, you've raised another one. I had 2, now I've got 3, Kevin, so I hope I can remember them all now. I've probably forgotten. Not very good at retaining my information anymore. one was the soil succession and plant succession, which is such a really key point. And yeah, even in your book when you're talking about the fungal bacterial ratios, Kevin, and yeah, that's what we've been seeing with these other plants coming up. And then they do have a suppression on what would be typically winter weeds. So we've got a fair bit of country in this year, and we've done it before several times, but it's really works best when we have a good summer rainfall event to stimulate those summer plants, but where we've put some really beautiful crop into some completely chemical free country, because there's been such a dominance of these summer plants and suppressing the winter's weeds as such, and put a crop into that. So that's a key point. Secondly was just the cover crop capacity, for anyone who's listened to Christine Jones talking, and when she has a slide there of the multi-species plants alongside a monoculture, and yeah, we experienced that very dramatically last year with the 84mm growing season rainfall. We had a cover crop that was sown on some pretty ordinary country, but it performed so well that we were able to cut hay off it, and we might have had some monoculture crop paddocks not too far away that, yeah, we might have harvested, but certainly didn't get a phenomenal result.
With that 1.8 ton hay crop to the hectare off that field, and then the harvested paddock literally across the track, maybe 150 kilos to the hectare on a good patch.
Yeah, so a big difference there. So just showing that resilience, and I guess that comes to, I think this was my third point, was yeah, trying to work towards a system where we can sell multi-species grains without having to separate them all. So, changing that marketplace requirement so that, yeah, we're not having to be put into a situation where, trying to handle multi-species grains is hard. And we're certainly working on relationships with dairy farmers and so forth to be able to sell a multi-species product.
Yes.
And
Well,
happy days then.
Interesting story on that one. With one of the other regen groups that Shorty and I are involved with. They started out as the Dirty Dozen. So I thought that was a cute little name. But every Sunday they get a different speaker in. And one of the things that Paul, the ringleader of the group, one of the things that he did is he was, for his dairy, he has robotic milkers, and so he would buy a little bit of oats and a little bit of peas. And he, of course, get them from different growers, and you get feed test on them, and he would mix them together and use that as the treat for the dairy cows when they're milking. One of the regen guys, he was growing oats and peas together. So instead of mixing it, oh, perfect, it's in the same truck. It goes into the silo, and everything's good. So he grabbed a sample of the oats and the peas that were grown together, sent them away for feed test. And the oat pea mixture, the oats were higher feed test than the monocrop oats, and the peas were higher value than monocrop peas. Yeah. So he said it was a no-brainer, and I don't know if he end up paying a premium for it, but as the grower, it would save him the process of separating. I had a quick chat with Goodies down at Albany, and they said that's what they're doing today, is they're bagging up their chook feed of, I think, was it 5 or 6 different species. And once again, Shorty, I think you've been playing around with some stuff too of mixed feed, and it works. You got the synergies working together. You have all these different root exudates. You have that intermingling of roots, so you get that exchange of the microbiomes to trigger genes that get expression. You save that seed, and now we have that microbiome 2.0. We're building mycorrhizae in the soil. We're building the saprophytic fungi. We're building the soil stress. It's a beautiful system. It's an absolute beautiful system. And if anybody has a copy of my latest book, my wife, she actually teared up when she read Shorty's story about his progression through, the where he was conventionally to where he is today. And that's, it kind of goes with the soil too, where, we have these soils that are struggling. We're here to be caretakers of the soil, to help improve, to build and leave this for the future generations and make it better. And that's this whole thing. And once again, doing in monocultures, doing with chemistry, it doesn't work.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Hey, Kev, can you please put a link to your book in the chat for anyone interested? I certainly am, and great book. Bloody good stuff, Kevin. It's Dirt to Soil, is it?
Not just dirt.
Not just dirt, sorry. That's Gabe Brown's Dirt to Soil, and not just dirt. So love that. Those of the regen space will know that we don't call soil dirt ever. Okay. Very cool. Hey, I'm going to open up for some questions in a minute. So if anyone's got any, please chuck them in the chat now, because I am conscious of everyone's time here today. And I think there's been so many gold nuggets in here so far. I just want to touch on something that fills me with a lot of hope with what you're doing, Di. And I think you've touched on it a couple of times just here now. But the effect of the small water cycle leading to the larger water cycle, and what you guys are trying to achieve now that you've got these bigger leases sort of coming together in one sort of area. Just the power of that, especially in the conditions that you're growing in that semi-arid zone. Could we talk a little bit about that? And if there's any science that comes up, I know you don't like science that much, but just to feed into this, and we'll see what comes of it.
Yeah, I guess with Western Australia, with the government policy early on in the piece, was all about clearing land for agricultural purpose. And we have got some physical structures called the rabbit-proof fence. And on the other side of the rabbit-proof fences is primarily pastoral land where it hasn't been cleared. And it still had human impact in a lot of areas, but it hasn't had the bulldozers through, I guess. But what they've found is that the rainfall clouds tend to follow that vegetation. So they tend to stick on the east side of the rabbit-proof fence, and the southwest corner of Western Australia has been noted to have been drying out quite considerably since about the 1970s. So and they've done some world first studies and research along that and tracking, the changes in the rainfall patterns. And it was really quite pronounced, well, for the last 18 months for us, but even for the whole Southwest Land Division, had some of the hottest and driest conditions in the last 12 months that it's probably experienced. So yeah, big issues out there, but what they're trying to work out is what can happen if you can try and revegetate a large enough area, perhaps in the middle of the wheat belt, which is what we've been fortunate enough now to start pulling together. We've got about 50,000 acres of our own land that we're either leasing or own or whatever that's conjoined. But alongside that, it actually links up to another piece of land which was actually planted down to trees by a carbon company probably about 15, 20 years ago. So that'd be another 30 or 40,000 acres. Potentially, I don't really know exactly, but it's a fairly good chunk when you're driving past it. And we've got another parcel, about 14,000 acres just to the northwest. So on the same sort of rain pattern track. Yeah, so the local farmers had started noticing, even just with that tree planting, that some of the rainfall patterns had changed through that area. And so now we're tacking onto it as well. It would be really interesting to see over time what does happen, and touch wood. We've had the rain patterns, when you look on the radar, have been coming through this zone this year. Whether that continues to be a regular event or not remains to be seen, but it's really something worth looking at. But along with that large water cycle potential is also just the biodiversity opportunities and habitat flow for, animals and, native flora and fauna and insects and everything to have safe haven in a large conjoined area. So there's so many multiple benefits that can occur with those kind of things. But anyway, so watch this space, and we'd like to see how it unfolds, but certainly some scientific measurement would be good. That's not our forte.
And the small water cycle stuff that you're seeing out there as well, Di, is quite remarkable, isn't it? And probably saved your bacon a bit in those 80 mil seasons. I mean, that's just unbelievable.
Absolutely.
Did you want to
Yeah,
touch on?
and I guess that
Yeah.
becomes down to the diversity of plants that can, by retaining whatever can be green year round and stimulating that change in the soil ecology, so that these other more summer active plants that are of high value become part of that landscape, and also just the diversity of plants that are making themselves known. Certainly has saved our bacon, because we're able to maintain still a large number of the sheep without damaging landscape, so we can maintain that epigenetic progression within those animals. And also just that productive capacity of the land. So yeah, it does make a big difference.
It's quite
Yeah,
amazing.
Western Canada has been in the last 4 years of a fairly significant drought also, and one of the things that I was doing with a few producers that decided they were going to listen to me is we put in some things like chicory, and just a couple per square meter. And what we found is every time we dug up a chicory plant, the soil was always wet. Even we were 40-50 mils during the growing season, and they were still wet around there. So this, between the mycorrhizae and the root exudates and just the leaky roots, it was sharing water. It was trying to make that work. The other thing we were doing is the grower put in, I told him to put down 10 pounds of winter wheat per acre, so about 10 kilos per hectare of winter wheat in with his durum. So the winter wheat, it has to go through the winter before it produces a seed head. So it was vegetative throughout the whole growing season. And right across the road was a farmer that was using the best management practices. And once again, best management practices is what we think they're the best as of right now today. Are they going to be the best tomorrow? Maybe not. But anyways, so he did some tillage. He used a fungicide seed treatment. He put fertilizer with the seed. He sprayed a fungicide. His durum crop was about 30 centimeters high. Right across the road was this producer I was working with, and his durum was belt high, nice and green. And crop insurance came out and looked at it, because in North America we have this thing called crop insurance that helps promote more bad practices, but that's another story to get into. And so the crop insurance agent said, well, it's easy to explain what happened is the rain stopped right at the road. So how's that for a micro water cycle where the road stops the rain? But it's that micro water cycle that those big leaves underneath the durum, they would cool down quicker than the air. Where was the water? The dew was on that plant, ran down to the roots. The roots then through the mycorrhizae shared with the durum, the whole beautiful system. But we've lost that natural intelligence. So to be involved with a group like this, it's absolutely awesome.
Yeah,
Kevin, I had a quick question. How did that winter wheat go? So they planted the winter wheat with the durum, was that correct? How did that winter wheat? So it vegetated and grew, but didn't go on ahead. Did it then stay about that high and then went through the winter? Is that right? And then did it vegetate after it's ahead after the winter?
Yes. So it was underneath the snow. The snow left, and then it started growing. But because we were only dealing with about 6 per square meter, it's not a big deal. They were still doing a little bit of pre-seed glyphosate, so that took that out, and on with the next crop.
Very, very, very.
Just wondering, is
So-
Haggerty a member of the daisy family? Is it, Kevin, or what is that? We haven't.
Yes.
Yeah, because I was just wondering, because it was interesting what you said, because there's a plant in Western Australia which is considered a weed that's only really made itself known probably the last 15 to 20 years in the farming country, and it's called Metricaria, which is a really prolific opportunistic plant, and that is actually part of the daisy family. And we had been noticing that when we grow crops after this weed, we've been using a roller crimper on it when it's been dry because it's quite brittle, laying it down and sowing crops into it, and we've had beautiful crops after it. And it's we've discovered it's a member of the daisy family, so probably having a very similar impact. Yeah, whereas it's, you know, the bane of some farmers' life. Yeah, it serves a wonderful purpose as part of a soil regeneration program.
Well, here's another neat little story about how plants fix dirt. One of our cohorts that he's a bison farmer in northern Saskatchewan, and he asked me, "Is it crazy to seed a pound of chicory per acre?" And normally, the quick math is 0.1 pounds of chicory per acre will give you about 1 seed per square foot. So he was going to go really, really heavy along with a lot of these perennials. He was going to go to use a herbal A. And so he has some eroded soil. So, you know, the really rolling topography. So the tops of the hills are white. So there's no topsoil at all, washed away, blew away. And so this is just into the sea horizon, which is highly calcareous. Nothing wanted to grow. So he seeded this cover crop and his with chicory along with his perennial. And on these white hilltops, nothing was growing except for chicory.
Right.
And so in year 2, you know, chicory here, it overwinters, it goes to bloom in year 2. And what I've seen on our farm is it disappears after year 2. So in the low spots, it flowered. Year 2, in the low spots where good soil, there was no chicory in year 3. The hilltop, it was still full of chicory, but it was a little smaller. And the perennials that he seeded with it started creeping in a little bit. The next year, that chicory patch was smaller, and there was more of those species he wanted kind of followed. And so this is, once again, as we're dealing with soil succession, plant succession, we have these plants that will fix the soil. And when they're done fixing the soil, they're going to get out of the way. Oh,
Yeah.
You have this problem, this mycological advantage. I'm going to fix it. And when I have it fixed, I'm leaving. And then we have the opportunity, if given a chance, these plants that we want, or, you know, the plants that are the next succession, are going to start moving in. And that understanding is so crucial. And, you know, right, I don't know, Shorty, if you're getting all the smoke the last couple of days, but in Saskatchewan, the sky was, with the sun, it was that reddish color. It was really smoky. So I don't know where all these fires are in Canada, but once again, in Canada, we don't use fire as a management tool. And once again, before the Europeans came to Canada, fires were a natural thing, and it kept the balance. And once again, Elaine Ingham, she has that nice, beautiful little chart that lays everything out about plant succession and what does that mean on your fungal bacterial ratio. It makes so much sense.
That's absolutely amazing. Hey, I'm conscious of everyone's time here, so I'm going to jump into some questions if everyone's happy with that. I think I'll hand it. I might unmute those that have asked questions in the chat, and they can ask just in case there's any nuance on the way that they want to frame it, because you may have answered the question, you know, as we've gone on. So, Rochelle, you're going to be first off the block here. If you're in the house there, I'm going to unmute you here, and if you'd like to ask your question, which I think is an absolute cracker.
Yeah, hi guys. Yeah, look, I don't know if it's easy to put into to articulate and put into words, because I know it's such a felt thing and intuitive thing for you. But I guess I'm finding that there's so much information about what to do, and you know, the science is all out there in this space. But there's something about how you know, need to be connected with yourself and each other, and you know, the community, that seems to precede being able to connect with nature. That's my thoughts about it. And I'd love to know where you guys are at these days. Is there particular conscious practices that you do, or ways that you have sort of found that really connects you, you know, whether it's, yeah, being out there, seeing the sunrise and the sunset? I don't know. I'll hand it over to you if there's something that you can share that could be insightful for others.
I guess it's been an ongoing journey, Shell. Yeah, I think I mean, in the early stages, it was just that intense involvement with you know, being with the land, but having the relationship with Jane Slattery has been an enormous, and unfortunately it doesn't look like she's been able to get into her link to
Yeah.
work. Is she there?
She's here.
Oh, is she?
She's
I
there.
couldn't
She just
get to
she's
work.
not on camera.
Oh, okay. Well, I
in the
didn't think
list.
she
Yes.
was. Oh, well, that'd be lovely, because working with Jane's been what's been a big key
Yep.
thing, helping us to understand how to remove our impact, trust the animals, trust what was going around us, and start working more from within our heart and love for what was out there, I suppose. And that's been a long journey, and it's still continuing. We still catch up with Jane, you know, not as regular as we did, but we're certainly still working on lots of things to continue. We're just accepting that we aren't the controllers of all this thing, and all this beautiful natural intelligence stuff can work around us, and how we just fit within that as opposed to being the drivers of it. So yeah, I guess lots of people use different ways to try and be happy with that, because I guess the Western education system, certainly in Australia, is one that trying to increase your intellectual capacity and mastery over your world. But really, is that how it works? I don't believe that it does. I believe we're just a part of something, and we just need to be humble enough to recognise that if we can remove our own personal judgments, I guess, and, you know, expectations that, you know, this, that, and the other might occur, that we can, yeah, just settle into what a better rhythm, I guess. Whether that's the right way to explain it. Do you want to say something, Matthew?
Oh, I was just going to add in that, yeah, I kind of briefly touched on at the start that, like, yeah, natural intelligence farming for us is, yeah, isn't just the set practices, it's the kind of way you live your life, and it's the perspective you have on things. And that's what, yeah, where Jane's work comes in, really special. Like, you really, she helps you get into a position to have, like, take your ego out of the way, come from a position of humility to understand that us humans, I feel like in the big world, we like to think that we know best, and yeah, we know all, and we need to fix everything. But really, I mean, nature's been out there organizing everything, having a pretty well-run system for millions and billions of years. And yeah, to really try and just have that come from a position of humility and appreciate the power of what the natural system can really do, and just how we can just sit alongside and enjoy its beauty and facilitate it to function at its best.
Is Jane, can she pop
Yeah.
in there, Dave? She's
Yeah,
there.
absolutely.
Yeah,
She's here. Hey, there she
can you
is.
actually hear me?
Yeah.
I can see my video is on, and I didn't know if it was going to be clear enough, because we've got a bit of a storm happening here today, so my service is terrible. But I managed to get on. It is something that's really hard to put into words, and I guess, and really well said, both Di and Matt. And of course, you know, this is something that we've worked with. Matt, you were born into this, and it's almost like you don't know anything else but this. But it's something that we've worked on for, like, I don't think there is any specific way of actually putting it into words when you actually get to where you need to be to actually work with what the terminology of natural intelligence farming is. A lot of people are trying to find a way to understand it, but it's actually, and, you know, I guess what I've done is gone away from the farming side of things and really gone into actually delving and working with people directly. Like Di was saying earlier, I just wanted to listen and just sort of not interrupt or anything. But when Di was saying that now, you know, you can go into a new lease block and within 12 months, the whole thing's changed. I believe that happens because of where you are, Di and Matt and the whole family, in that your belief is that you're capable of this. You don't have expectations. You don't have any, there's no anything put on anything. It is truly just a blind faith. Well, it's not blind. It is actually just faith in that what you are working with knows far more better than you could ever get to reach the capacity of. And that's it's a really big it's a big thing to get your head around. We live in a world where we are pretty much all, we're all conditioned to supposedly work a certain way. We are born in this world, and then we grow up in this world, and we're supposed to behave and adhere to these certain principles that are expected to that's the way we're supposed to live. And who says that's the right way? I know in a lot of my life, it's been probably very the opposite. I've probably gone against a lot of things in myself and struggled with that in the early stages. But now I just, and a lot of people are so focused on what's going to happen in their future. There is no future. What happens in this minute determines what's going to happen in the next minute. And the past, there is no past. The past is nothing anymore. We can't change the past. And our future is going to be whatever we decide it will be. We are the creators of our world. And the world in which we choose to live in, which is an individual thing, and everyone is so different. There is not one person on this planet that is the same. We are all individuals, but we have this system, which we are part of and we are responsible for. We have this system that wants everyone to be the same, because it's almost like if everyone's the same, everyone can be controlled. But when we're individuals, it's like, how do we manage that? And yet when we're individuals, there is no managing, because it's like this relationship where, you have this relationship with yourself that you're not there worrying about what's going on in someone else's life or what's going on in someone else's world. And you can just be present in your own world and just really enjoy what it is that you love and, really value in your life. Again, they're just words. What do the words really mean? Anything? Probably not. It's how you actually feel. And I'm finding with, I do a lot of workshops now, and I'm finding with the people that I'm attracting to my workshops, they are just so stuck. And they're just so stuck and torn between what's going on. And the biggest thing I'm finding is people are just so disconnected from their roots. And I won't go into explaining that because that's a whole other thing. But if people are disconnected from their roots, we all know if a plant doesn't have good roots, what happens? I don't need to answer that question. And most people on the planet are no different. So my work has been, I've loved my work. I used to actually think, oh God, I don't want to work with people. It's just so hard. I love the animal bit. And I learned so much from working with the animals, and and this is where I'll get a feeling that will come, and there's no words. Without what Di and I learnt from the animals, I wouldn't know what I know today. And trying to put that into a human language, there is no language to explain that. There is this feeling that is just so overwhelming and so powerful and so empowering that when people get to that, and there are a few that are starting to get to that, that's when you understand what natural intelligence farming is. It is off the Richter scale to what people think that this whole thing is about in this beautiful planet that we live in. And we are the caretakers of it. But how many people all they do, they wake up every day and all they want to do is go out and fix something. What have we got to fix? Honestly, what on earth do we need to fix? There is nothing to fix. It is so beautiful. We need to fix ourselves if we think we need to fix something, because it's ourself that has the issues or has whatever the problem is or whatever it is. Because what's out there is beautiful. And yeah, I don't know. I'm just going to leave it there. I wasn't even going to speak. I just wanted to listen. But it's a very hard thing to put into words. It is a heartfelt language. That's probably what I'm going to say. And to work with natural intelligence farming in the way that we have learned and understood this over a long period of time, it is this feeling that is absolutely awesome and amazing. And it's not a feeling that comes from external. It's a feeling that comes from deep within. And when you get that and you hang on to it, it is like so precious, and there's no way I will ever let go of it. I've been and I've experienced and I've gone through what most people have, but this is the most important thing to me. And it's not about anything external. So I hope I've been able to sort of maybe show you a little bit of that, because words just don't do it justice.
Beautiful, Jane. Thank you so
Beautiful.
much for sharing.
Mm.
Oh, I'm a bit emotional now myself, actually.
Don't do that, Dave, because that's what happens every time.
No.
But it is a feeling, isn't it? And it's and we try to put words to a feeling, and it's just.
And someone in here's just put in the chat, pure intention. You know, like that's it. You know, it's
but intention onto yourself, because
Okay.
if you put an intention out there, that's like an imprint. You're putting it out there, you're trying to change something, whereas bring it back to yourself, and then intention is probably okay as a word.
Okay.
Yeah, again, different people relate to different words, and that's all fine. We're all different.
Yeah.
Mm.
No, that's beautiful. And I saw so many crossovers there between, you know, the way that we look to control and, you know, the land and all that, within ourselves too, you know, like it's so connected, and that's part of, you know, what we've come across at Smart Soil is that mind body soil connection, we like to call it. You know, it all starts in the soil, and unless we heal ourselves, we don't stand a chance. So I absolutely love the work that you guys do, and thank you for sharing that so generously, and maybe we can do a whole nother one, just going down on the deep dive of what this part of natural intelligence is, because I think to start with, we need to meet people where they're at, and then it's like we go on this big journey, right?
Well, that's exactly it. When when I spent the day with Christine Smith, and you know the how many hours with Amanda, the hours with Shorty, their passion for looking for doing the right thing, and looking at the different options, and being have access to people like Jane and Haggerty. This is that whole networking part, and once again, Shorty will reaffirm this, that there's a grazing and soil health conference that started up in Edmonton, Alberta. Ooh, was that 8-9 years ago? And I love going to it because it's a bunch of friends. We're going in, we're sharing experiences, our observations, we're sharing our failures, which once again, Shorty has an acronym for fail. But this is that whole learning and in moving that peg forward. And when we look at that, exactly as Jean said, was as we're looking to heal the soil and nature, we're healing ourselves. And
I look at it the other way.
Oh, well, yeah, it's related. It's related. Well, yeah, I guess when we get the soil, we get better food, we get better. Absolutely, it goes that way. But it's that whole healing process in the whole system, including us, heal.
Totally. Yes, I'm still trying to wrap my head around it, because the head doesn't understand, and what I've got out of it, and many chats with Jane and Di, is that it has to come from in here. It's a really heartfelt thing, and that's what we need to be working on, because the head doesn't get it, right? It's always trying to overthink it and compartmentalize things so we can understand it, and okay, well, let's
break it into parts.
Yeah, exactly. Break it right down, restrict it back to the elements, apply it to this to the plant so it can grow. All right, well, let's move on to the next question. Vanessa, Curly, I don't know if we've answered your question here, but if you would like to, I mean, if we have, just give me a thumbs up, and that's fine. But if you'd like to fire your question away, please do so.
So where we've just been, to go down to the level of the question.
I know.
I don't know if it's quite appropriate anymore, so I'm really happy to take
it's
it
all
offline.
it's all appropriate.
It's all appropriate. Yep.
So my question was really simple. I was really listening for when you're taking on all of these new blocks, and you're working at such a scale that I can't even really imagine. But when you find that actually the block that you've got, the area that you want to put a crop in, is really quite, for us, it's an orchard. Part of our property has been an orchard in the past. And so we have all of these undulations, and the contractors that I'm working with and the who I would have to rely on for equipment said, oh no, we can't put a seeder through there. We can't do this. We can't do that because of all of the undulations. And so I sort of get stuck. And I think, well, hang on, you guys are doing some of this all the time. Surely not everything's perfect when you go in and it's all like flat and beautiful that you can run the seeder over the top. So what are some creative things that you might have done when you're faced with something like an old orchard, or maybe not an old orchard, but something equivalent? And you go, okay, right, well, we've got to maybe try this so we can put the seed down. Or do you, like what we did is literally just run over it with a little conical cedar, but you know, it wasn't perfect. It's certainly not going to get us where we need to be. So yeah, just sort of thoughts and ideas.
Awesome.
We certainly have come up with country that's, you know, got big blowholes in it or whatever else. Is definitely not smooth. And yeah, Ian has had, he's got a pretty buggered back these days because he's been spent years and years in tractors bouncing around and throwing himself all over the place. But yeah, it is difficult, certainly at scale. I mean, we just have to slow down with the gear as much as possible. We don't have anything special as far as gear. We use the same gear. Running the livestock as well does help to, over time, and putting things like cover crops and so forth, and having that opportunity to build more topsoil can help to alleviate some of those unevenness. But we have found that in the first instance, using a tine machine as opposed to the disc machine does help a little bit more too, to try and even out some of those, you know, nasty crevices or whatever it might be. So yeah, just a bit of patience too, and taking a bit of time, but and encouraging, if you've got areas there that might have been windblown or something in the past, or heavily compacted, just prioritise plants growing. It doesn't matter what the hell it is, as long as there's something growing there to be restoring that topsoil and restoring that soil function. But yeah, bit of patience sometimes, and just having to go a bit slower.
On the new property that we just took on this year, I was the one who seeded one of the paddocks that had a big blown area, and some of the blowholes were over 1 meter deep just. So what wasn't that great to take the tractor over, just slowed it right down, which slowed my hectare rate up a fair bit. But another thing that I know Mum and the girls who do a lot of the sheep work do a bit is that they also put some hay bales and stuff in there, which not only does it get a lot of the sheep microbial activity happening in that area to try and boost it, but then the sheep never eat every single part of the hay bale. It leaves this big wide circle of deep organic matter that the sheep have been trampling all through, just to try and get some organic matter covering over it, and that over time also that builds up to help level things out as well.
Yeah.
Great call, Maddie. That's, yeah, so bale grazing is a good tool, and the animals, again, probably going to be, the animals know how to manage that ground a bit better than the big machines, I reckon. Beautiful. Charlie, you're up next, mate. I'm going to bring you in here. What is that? We've got two Charlies in here. Charlie Thurgate. Fire away, sir.
How you going, guys? So my question was just basically, when you're coming onto new country, doing your foliar, are you sometimes putting in like NPK and traces, or just doing a compost extract foliar?
Pretty much compost extract foliar with some food. So we make up a food to feed those microbes with a bit of fish and seaweed and fulvic and humic acids and stuff like that. Yep. So there's no real NPK coming to it anywhere.
Yeah, we've noticed with the first thing, we'll put the our Johnson Sue extract as a seed dressing over the seed, as well as putting the extract with the food down the tube when seeding, and then we go over the foliar sprays. And yeah, it's been working really well to have pretty good results on that first year.
Yeah, and the worm liquid as well. So that's it's part of the liquid down the tube and the foliar.
yeah, using the Nutrisoil.
Yep.
Beautiful.
And like I said, the soil tests came back and I didn't see any significant glaring deficiencies in any of the soil tests of that I give 3 or 4 different paddocks. Everything looked like it was where we wanted it to be.
And that was one of the initial turning points, wasn't it, Di? In the early days, I've heard you say in some of those early interviews about, you kept getting things tested, and you're always deficient in elements, and no matter what you did, there was always something that was lacking because you're trying to micromanage the nutrients too much.
Yeah, that was when we were using synthetic fertilizers. And then what we noticed is once we changed and using the whole biological type approach, was that regardless of soil type, regardless of history, and regardless of that soil testing information, was that what the plant would tell us with tissue testing was they'd all sort of get closer and closer, being very, very similar over a fairly rapid time frame. And a lot of those deficiencies, like Kevin's just saying, they weren't really showing up. So it just worked itself out. So we've got a lot of trust. And I think that was one of the words I was thinking kept popping into my head when we were having the earlier conversation, is trust. Yeah. Perhaps that's the key factor to it all. And that's sort of what we have seen over a variety of environments and soil types and situations, that it sorts itself out, and very similar outcomes across it all. And I guess that's what Canada, Kevin's saying, in Canada, it's all the same. We're all the same. It's different parts of the planet.
Same excuses too, by the sounds of it. Yeah, the rain stopped at the road. Yeah. At the fence line. Okay, beautiful.
And that's exactly the problem, is we don't trust the system. So what do? Well, we'll add a little phosphate, because a little phosphate isn't going to hurt. It does. It stops the biological processes in the soil. It interrupts that plant soil microbiological interaction, and that we keep going back to it because it's safe and we know that it works, but it doesn't work. That's the fun thing with all this, and it's great seeing success like this of how we can help people move forward.
Totally. Yeah, I'm just so grateful for everyone for tuning in today, and I think it's been just an amazing conversation. Di, Matthew, Kevin, Jane, Rochelle, everyone for coming on and helping spread your wisdom. And again, we've got the acronym that Kevin was talking about earlier from Shorty is in the FAIL acronym, first attempt in learning. I like that. It's very good. So yeah, I mean, unless there's any closing comments from everyone there, I'm pretty happy to wrap it up. I know I've gone a little bit over time, so I apologize for that. But how do you stop a conversation this fruitful? It's hard to wrap it.
Yeah. No, thanks for having us, David. It's been
Thanks,
really good.
Dave.